That's one of the questions, one of the main things. Where are the black people at? Where are my folks at?
The southeast area where everyone has been pushed into, I don't want to live out there at all.
You know, and having to explain that, oh, we're out here in the numbers.
We're in Gresham, we're in Fairview, we're in Troutdale.
What is the numbers? Okay, well, you know, 181st, 162nd.
There's even less out there that's like oriented for people of color. There's like
Felony Flats, the New Hood, Wild Hundreds are terms that I've heard.
All of my life, I haven't lived in any other part.
It was on Interstate and Lombard before the MAX trains and all that got put in there.
Of the city, but Northeast Portland.
If you take a look at where African Americans can afford to live, in the 24, 27 neighborhoods, they can only afford to live in 2 or 3 of them.
I was unable to rent because I couldn't afford the prices in my area.
We were making above minimum wage, but not enough to pay for what they were charging at that time.
Yeah, at that time there wasn't anything that was safe or sanitary or anything that I would feel comfortable with raising my children or even myself living in. The only place that I could find that I could afford on my Section 8 voucher was out on 162nd.
The place that we lived in was very, very nice, but the neighbors weren't really, hey, welcome, you know.
They'll be the first to tell you, I don't feel welcome out here, or I don't feel welcome in this neighborhood, but I'm just going to bear with it.
I do feel like there's a racist presence out there in East Portland. It's not uncommon that you hear about the Klan, pieces of, I want to say flyers of them recruiting and looking for members, saying how the neighborhood is being run over with immigrants and niggas.
Everything we did was in inner Northeast because I did not want to leave my roots. That's where it was so familiar to me.
I put my son in a school out in East Portland, and he was assaulted by a teacher. And that was very traumatic for me. It was very traumatic for my son because he was in 4th grade at the time.
And I did not want to uproot the kids just because that was the only place that I could find to live.
And from then on, I just said my children won't go to these schools that were predominantly white. And so I made sure that my kids got into King's School, which at that time was predominantly black.
Our day probably started around 5:30, getting up, getting everyone together, making breakfast, and then getting out the door, getting everybody dropped off to school.
There was a sense of community in that school for our children and history, and my son thrived there.
9:30, 10, we're eating dinner about 10:30 and getting into bed by 11 and then get back up again 5:30 the next morning.
Typically about an hour, hour and a half to get back and forth to school.
I'm not the only one that this is affecting. I thought this was just my situation that, you know, I was in. But more people I talked to, there were a lot of people that lived in outer Northeast, but commuted inside.
Nobody is really sticking together because we don't see each other. By the time you get up, go to work, drop your kids off at school, get back home, make dinner, you're done.
Going home, I can get there probably about an hour and a half, provided that there's no problems with the transportation.
I really believe and have spoken with numerous people who want to move back into Northeast Portland.
I've always been trying to get back into Northeast Portland. I've never ever given up that hope. They ended up calling me and telling me that they actually had a place for me. I about fell off my chair.
I would move back to Northeast Portland if I had the choice, if I could afford it.
That was one of the happiest days for me. It was, first of all, we were in a home again. I didn't never want my kids to be raised in an apartment environment so that they can feel like this is somewhere that they can come home to, that they can bring their friends to. Yes, my youngest can walk to school, which makes it really nice, just a few steps away from the schoolhouse. Go to friend's house that is just, you know, around the corner. And my kids have never had that opportunity to do that.
They were afraid of being displaced. That was their major concern, major outcry at every meeting that I attended. I can see these people to this day.
I'm kind of skittish about it. I'm skittish because what could happen again? What happens if I move back to that community and then somebody else comes along and now we want this house, now we want this piece of land, or, and now I have to uproot my family and move again. I'm not trusting of it.
I think a lot of the discussion is around this idea that if you can just get people of color back into Northeast Portland, then everything will be fine.
I'm glad that there's still some of it here, and they're supposed to be moving, people of color back in, but we'll see.
Where they live is not the issue. How are they doing is the issue.